On August 11th of last year, the Pentagon was telling reporters that Kabul might fall in 90 days. 4 days later, the city fell. The sudden collapse of the Afghan capital, and thus the whole country, stunned the world. A U.S. government report tells us that as the Taliban was taking control of the city on the afternoon of the 15th, helicopters prepared to carry President Ashraf Ghani's wife and senior staff to safety. But fearing Ghani would be executed if he didn't depart with them, officials convinced the president to get on a helicopter too. They had no idea where they were going. In an exclusive interview, Ghani spoke to me from the UAE. I was in New York. President Ghani, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
People around the world are wondering why you decided to leave. In May 2021, just months earlier, you gave an interview to Der Spiegel in which you said, and I'm now going to quote you, "No power in the world could persuade me to get on a plane and leave this country. It is a country I love and I will die defending." But you did get on a plane and leave the country. Why?
I did get on a plane because it became impossible to defend it. From the presidential ground, all the presidential protection force melted and put on civilian clothes. The Minister of Defense had left. I was ready to go to the Minister of Defense because he had called me that Kabul could not be defended, and I said, I'm going to come to the ministry. The ministry was empty. He was on a plane. I was the last to leave, and the reason I left was because I did not want to give the Taliban and their supporters the pleasure of yet again humiliating an Afghan president and making him sign over the legitimacy of the government. I've never been afraid. You've seen repeatedly rockets have come, landed around me, and I've not moved. But to surrender and be humiliated, and it was a split-second decision, because they had entered Kabul and the embassy, the US embassy, had already evacuated the embassy at 9 o'clock.
One of the things in the report says that you and your national security advisor, and more your national security advisor, began to worry that the Presidential Guard itself would assassinate you. Were you not sure of the loyalties even of your own personal Presidential Guard?
There was firing in the morning when I was in a meeting. I don't know who started firing, but it was very close. So they asked me to go inside. Cooks in the presidency were found with instruction. I think one was being offered $100,000 to poison me. So it is an environment that one needs to understand.
You get into a helicopter, and when you take off, where do you think you're going?
I thought I was going to the airport. It took off northwards. So after 15 or 20 minutes, I realized that we were not going to the airport. So I asked the national security advisor, and he said the airport was not safe. And on the plane, a decision was made then on the helicopter to go to Uzbekistan. There no preparation had been made anywhere else, as all the documentation shows, because I had no plans of leaving.
You didn't have your passport with you?
No.
You didn't have your personal belongings with you?
Nothing. I was wearing Afghan clothes with a waistcoat and a pair of shoes, and that was it. I didn't even have a book. People who know me, I practically never fly without a book, because that's when I concentrate and read, and nothing else.
Now, you know there are these rumors that you left with $169 million of cash. What is your response?
Well, Sagar has categorically proven that I did not leave with any money. This is part of a disinformation campaign. You have, among others, investigated my past, and also, if you look at Ambassador Bolton's memoirs, President Trump used to confuse me with President Karzai and had alleged that I owned property outside, and they investigated and found nothing. I've lived an honorable life. I have been a self-made man and did not need, I declared all my assets in Cigar Now, and its detailed report has shown that there was no money on the helicopter.
For viewers, let me clarify. This is the Special Inspector General's report. It does say that it would have been physically impossible for you to have taken the money. There were no, all eyewitness accounts say you did not. So my question to you is, the Russian embassy put out this number and this allegation. Why?
You'll have to ask them.
Why do you think this rumor got going? It's been so widespread, this sense that, you know, you took this money. What do you think accounts for it?
A blame game, a fall guy. And if you cannot kill the man, you attempt to kill his character. My integrity has been known. I lived a very simple life. Money shows, leaves signs. There have been massive investigations by journalists of other countries and leaders, and they've been able to. I challenged the entire investigative journalist community to come with any evidence of any wrongdoing or any interest on my part in accumulation of money. That is not what I went back to Afghanistan for. That's not why I put 16-hour days, and that's not why I represented my country with honor and dignity. So there was enormous anger and trauma in our country. We're a traumatized people, and trauma produces fear, and fear is directed in order to prevent our national unity and coming together.
Next on GPS, many say that President Ghani of Afghanistan should have been more like President Zelensky of Ukraine. They say Ghani should have stayed, not fled. I ask him about that directly when we come back. And we are back here with a special edition of GPS, marking tomorrow the one-year anniversary of the fall of Kabul. More of my exclusive interview with Afghanistan's former president, Ashraf Ghani. You know, many people make the analogy between you and President Zelensky, and they say Zelensky stayed and rallied his country and you left. What do you think of that comparison?
Well, the comparison should be made between 2014, when I became president, and not 2021. We have been fighting for 42 years. Our trauma was deep. Our people were tired of killing, and our people wanted an end to the bloodshedding. Second, President Zelensky was informed in detail by the CIA of the forthcoming Russian invasion. We were not offered a single piece of paper by our allies. The other comparison again is Europe stood, the whole NATO, United States, Australia, other countries rallied to Ukraine, but that is similar to the 1979 invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Union. Then again, a lot of people stood with us and appreciated and increased the scale. But this was a time in 2021 when support for staying in Afghanistan after President Biden's decision had gone. It was an irreversible decision. And people were fundamentally asking, if we are going to fight another round of civil war, what's the end? What's the conclusion?
Do you feel betrayed by the Americans?
I don't use those types of words because our trauma, our pain, needs not to go to the direction of betrayal or blame. we need to focus on what is now in front of us. We need to draw lessons from the past and deal with the present. Our country is in dire condition. I do not have the luxury to engage in blaming or sense of betrayal. Superpowers, big powers, decide on the basis of their national interest. What I hope is that they've considered the implications of those.
You think that Trump accord with the Taliban was a disaster?
It was. Everybody in the agreement. We had an Afghan-owned and Afghan-led peace process. We created the first real ceasefire. And if you look at the December evaluation of the OD report, it says in the last 18 years, there's never been as big an opportunity for a political settlement as now. And then our intern Afghan-owned and led process was hijacked. We were excluded from the peace table, and the peace process was incredibly flawed. It's the assumption that Taliban had changed. We're delusion. The process violates everything that from Acheson and Marshall to Kissinger and Baker regarding preparation, regarding organization. We never got to discussions. It was all foreplay. Yet in 2017, you interviewed me right after that, when President Trump announced his Afghanistan and South Asia strategy. President announced that it would be a condition-based agreement. They are never going to repeat the mistakes of a time-bound. Yet in 2019, Secretary Pompeo was seeking a time-bound agreement and then signed on February, had signed, in his presence it was signed, a time-bound agreement. This agreement was supposed to be conditional, but none of the core conditions was not only observed. The government, our partner, the government of the United States, became the enforcer of the Taliban agreement on us, threatening us with cutoff of aid, with every conceivable form of pressure to release 5,000 of the most hardened criminals, etc.
Next on GPS, I will ask Ashraf Ghani to look at the future. What does it hold for him and for his nation under the Taliban? We are back here with a special edition of GPS. More of my interview with Ashraf Ghani, who left Afghanistan almost exactly 1 year ago as the Taliban took control of the capital, Kabul. So let's look forward. As you say, the country is in dire straits. Should the Biden administration provide funds to the Taliban? As you know, this is a very, very complicated or a very fraught issue because it will be portrayed as providing money to a Taliban government which has violated all kinds of human rights norms. On the other hand, the Afghan people are starving. What should the United States do?
Internally, the Taliban are divided. There are dual centers of power minimally. The younger generation has a lot of capability, but they have not been brought to the forefront. There has to be discussion of the direction of Afghanistan. This is a serious challenge to the Muslim world, to the region, to the neighbors, to Europe in terms of the refugee flows and others, and of course to the world at large. The United States needs to make a decision. I do not advocate violence, but internal legitimacy, a process, not persons, not again a collection of warlords, but a process where the Afghan people for once are empowered to chart their way to the liberation is key to international legitimacy. In terms of money, I have ideas on market-based solutions that could create jobs and opportunities for Afghans in general and for Afghan women and the families of martyrs. The United States does not have implementation capacity anymore. It is so taken by contractors. All the money, at least 80% or 90% of the money that came to Afghanistan went to large contractors. And they take a cut of from 40% to 80%. This money did not reach Afghanistan. And humanitarian aid, now they want to take the money that I saved. I left $9 billion of reserve. I increased it almost by a third during my tenure. That's money that we had secured through incredibly hard work with the IMF and others. You do it this year as humanitarian aid. Where will the money come for next year or the year after that? We have to focus back on the possibilities. Afghanistan is a roundabout. It's the heart of Asia. If the region can come. Unfortunately, as you know extraordinarily well, the competitions now between big powers, the atmosphere is so difficult that we need to think outside the box to seeing how can we bring the region, the Islamic voices, and the global voices together to help the Afghan people.
And what will you do personally? What is the personal future for Ashraf Ghani?
When I'm writing, I've dived deeply into the past 20 years. I'm now assessing it and distilling it in a series of articles and books. Two, I learned to deal with uncertainty. And uncertainty, I'm working on a book called The Age of Global Uncertainty. Uncertainty surrounds us.
Do you imagine you will be back in Afghanistan?
I hope so, very much. It's my home. I belong to a family that has stayed in one village about between 500 and 600 years. And in the last 300 years, almost every generation, we've lost everything. So exile is not foreign to us, but my heart beats with all Afghans. There are 28 strata that have been really devastated by the Taliban regime.